Do you have any questions that are, yes? What is the accepted and what is the non-accepted relationship between Jesus and Mary Magdalene? By accepted, you mean what is the traditional church belief about that? Okay, what do we really believe about Jesus and Mary Magdalene? Okay, and we're going to list these. We're not going to answer them right now, but we will list them. Yes. Joe says, I think it's just fiction, and you need to look at it like that. So we could put down fact or fiction. Yes. Is there a gospel according to Mary Magdalene? I said we weren't going to answer the questions. Okay. Yes, there is. Do we have it in here? No, we didn't. It didn't make it into the canon that we use. Yes. I'm not sure what the Catholics have in their Apocrypha. We're not answering these questions right now. Ooh, I want to. Right. What else? How many so-called alternate gospels actually have been discovered? What else? I bet everybody heard that. Why do we call it the Gospel of Judas if gospel means good news, and what Judas had to say was not good news? Alan. Okay, what does the Mona Lisa have to do with it? That was a Tina Turner song. That's why she's got the smile. What does the Mona Lisa have to do with it? And I'm pretty sure we're going to get into some art history stuff. What's up with all these paintings that they talk about in the book? And are the things that Dan Brown points out really in there? And is that really what the artist intended? And so forth. And can you really run around the Louvre like that? Can you really run around for 28 hours in high heels with no pantyhose? And did you think about that in the movie? I did. The 38-hour eyeliner that Audrey Tautou had on. There's somebody else. Yes, Diane.
Know about the Roman Catholic Church stand and how much really is considered that they did cover up, so to speak?
What did the Roman Catholic Church really cover up? And then beyond that, how much of that stuff in the book and the movie do Roman Catholics actually do? And what do the Opus Dei people really do? What are the major lies and discrepancies of the book? Kendall. How practical is it that Mary Magdalene would have gone from what we call the Holy Land all the way to Western Europe to live out the rest of her days, since she would have been a woman alone? If she wasn't alone, who went with her? what's the deal with the Knights Templar, and how much of that is really true, the way they were presented in the book? Because there is such an organization. So what do they really do, and what do they really not do? Who put together the Bible that we use?
Good question. We'll be dealing with that today. Hi.
Yes. What did Constantine do with the Council of Nicaea, and how did we get that statement of faith? The Nicene Creed. Got a good one on the front row.
Okay. If Jesus was a very, very man, does it make any difference if he had a marriage and a child?
Does it make any difference if Jesus was married or not? Because we believe that he was fully God and fully man. So what does that do if he really did have a relationship with a real woman, not a pretend woman?
Yeah. Marry Jesus, so what? I guess would be the question. Okay. Yeah, it's good questions, all of these. There's one. Yes.
Would the book have been so popular were it not so controversial?
What do you all think? No, probably not. Yeah. It's the frenzy of the press that has fed this so much in the church that's just fed it. So, yeah, probably not.
Nobody cared about In the Kitchen with Rosie, you know?
Right.
The 3 people that read that book thought that was funny. That was Oprah's big cookbook. Okay.
Exactly. The Holy Grail movie. Why not movie, book. Yeah, why now is your question. Why is it such a fervor now? It's a good question.
You mean the Monty Python movie? That was 1971. Oh, okay.
Yeah, but just think of the other movies that have come out. Last Temptation of Christ, even the Monty Python, The Life of Brian. Those of you who are Monty Python lovers, like me, I love that. Life of Brian, yes. That was, oh man, when that came out. And, yes, even that one was also, all these different ones that come up. Even when, you think back to the Shroud of Turin, when that was so big and all those kinds of things raise controversy and question. People question their faith around those or want to point fingers at that. So anyway, why now? Why is this so controversial now? Anything else? All right, here's one. Yes. Oh, yeah, we had done that. Okay, let's have another show of hands. How many folks have read Da Vinci Code? Look at that. Yeah, quite a few. And now how many have seen the movie? Well, okay, a few more have come in, but less. I'd say about half of that, folks. So there you go. You were waiting to take this class before you went to see the movie, right? That was it. Yes.
You want to save $7 just in case it doesn't sound good. Is there actually a figure in the Last Supper painting that looks like a woman?
Supper. Is there a woman? All right.
It's a great piece of fiction, and Dan Brown is a tremendous author.
There's a question.
He's also, I wish I
that he is, yes.
At what point does fiction become sacrilege?
There you go. Good question.
Bill's going to answer that. That's a hard one. Yes, make an observation. She says that Dan Brown is poo-pooing the Catholic Church because they spent centuries, taking power away from women, and then the screenwriters and Opie, let's get down to it here, doesn't let the Sophie Neveu character do hardly anything in the movie except run around in those uncomfortable shoes. She doesn't have much to say, and I guess she has a little bit more to do in the book. She's shown a little bit more as a kind of a genius, but yeah, she didn't get to do too much in the book. In the movie. Mm-hmm. Right. Over in France, people know Audrey Tautou, but over here, if you didn't see Amélie, how many people saw Amélie? Okay, not very many people. You didn't know who she was.
I don't see any other hands. Oh, there's one way in the back. Scream out loud, Aaron.
Tim Campbell.
Tim. Okay. Yeah, we had a question earlier about the Knights Templar and what historical records really will help us understand or learn what the truth is about that. Okay.
Catherine?
Okay, because there's a lot in your question, because there's a lot of different theories and things that he has woven together into this book to create this work of fiction. And so, where did those all come from? Basically, what you're saying. Just the many theories. Okay. That's good.
Anything else? Okay. I'm going to press my feet.
Yeah, now, for this first time, Amy and I, it was an easy decision to let me take the lead because she's preaching today. And false. So, my. We've got our work cut out for us with all these questions. I think in what we have talked about in preparing for this class, we've done a pretty good job, at least of anticipating the kinds of questions that you'd have. And we may have a little bit more work on some of these, but we will tackle these questions, and we want to get your feedback on all of these. Oh, I'm going back too far. So, thank you for all those. Yeah, I'm going to need this stand here, so I do have to bring this back. Sorry about that. I'll put that right here. They've got that camera set up to a certain spot, so I've got to be sure that I'm standing in a particular spot. Okay, so I'm taking the lead today. Let's see, I've got a pen here I got to deal with too. Put that there, because I'm going to use the pen. So hold on, if I do this now and get to a blank sheet, I'm going to do some drawing. Thank you. No, I don't need those right there. That's fine. Okay. Now, also, you probably didn't know that if you check online, you can actually get the late night television, David Letterman, Jay Leno, best jokes of the night. Did you know that you can go online and find those? And I went back and found what were the jokes about Da Vinci Code those nights, way back on May 19th, 20th, 21st. And I found them. So let's start with that today, okay? Here we go. There's two of them. David Letterman said, hey, this is on the weekend after the movie had come out. Hey, the Da Vinci Code made $74 million over the weekend. It came in second, just behind a gas station out in Queens. There you go. That's right. Yeah. And now to Jay Leno, just to give equal billing, okay, here. Jay Leno said, the Catholic Church is still very angry about the Da Vinci Code. They don't like anything that makes more money in a weekend than they do. So yes. So there you go. We'll see what else we can find out there by them. Now, I am one that actually loved this book. It was such a page-turner that I consider it one of the best works of fiction that I've ever encountered. But that is what it is, a work of fiction. And even with the fact page at the very beginning of the book that says, all descriptions of artwork, architecture, documents, and secret rituals in this novel are accurate. That statement lends to the reader's curiosity about what is going to be written and has truly captured our imaginations. Oh my, oh my. As my seminary professor at Duke, James Eford, he was in biblical studies, as he said about a lot of things where there was controversy, he'd say, a whole lot of ink has been spilled about that one. And it's true, a whole lot of ink has been spilled, and so many articles. I can't tell you the number of articles that Dr. Biggs put in Amy's box, in my box, all highlighted in great yellow highlighter, pointing them and saying, I read this one, I read that one, I read this one. The New Yorker, of course, was one, and the Wall Street Journal, and so many that he kept saying, you might want to consider this. And several of you, too, have been giving us articles. We appreciate those. If you come across things, keep bringing them our way. We like to see kind of what perspectives people have out there. Well, the result of all that is that's why I think and feel that this book has given us in the church an opportunity to talk about our history and what we know as scholars and as teachers of the Bible. We can talk about what is fiction and what is nonfiction, just like some of you asked the question. There are several issues that we're going to tackle in here over the next 4 weeks. Now, several of you have come to me and said, I don't know how you're going to spend 4 weeks on all this. I mean, we can get this over in about 20 minutes, can't we? Well, actually, there are a lot of topics that we can talk about here. And so I think we could spend a good 8 to 10 weeks on all this, but we're condensing it down. And we're going to give you some papers too, or a reference at the end, so you can go on and do some other reading. But I want to go over what we're going to cover here in the next several weeks. Today we're going to talk about the Council of Nicaea that several of you asked about, and the putting together of the Bible. Okay? We are going to discuss the extra writings that were out there and their significance, and we'll talk a little, too, about the Catholic Church, even though that's really more for the third session. And the Catholic Church did not fare well in the book, or especially in the movie, too. Didn't come off looking very good. Secrecy, murder, all that, oh my. Next week, Amy is going to talk about Mary Magdalene and the issue of whether she and Jesus were married, had children, went to France, all of that. She will also talk about Da Vinci's Last Supper painting and the controversy surrounding that. In week 3, we want to talk about Opus Dei, the Priory of Sion, the Holy Grail, the Knights Templar, and other issues around those. And then in week 4, we thought we'd wait and kind of see what other questions may come up. Week 4, we're kind of holding out and try to wrap up with any questions that are not covered, but especially to make some summary comments about the Da Vinci Code phenomenon, because that's what it is, truly. It's a phenomenon, and we must ask why this book has captured our imaginations and what it means for us as people of faith, both individually and corporately as a church. And as I say, on that final Sunday, too, we will have a reference sheet to give some more places to go to read so you can further your knowledge about these issues in church history. So we've got a lot to cover, but what I want to do today is I want to look at what Dan Brown has said about the history of church in this work of fiction, the Da Vinci Code. And let's kind of look at it point by point. I'm using today Taylor Burton Edwards' work. He wrote some work on this. Taylor Edwards is the Director of Worship Resources for our United Methodist Board of Discipleship here. So this is comes from him, and I thought he gave some very good points. So let me start in. The heart of the novel's argument is the claim that the Roman Emperor Constantine called a major church council in Nicaea in Asia Minor, which is now modern-day Turkey, okay, in 325 A.D. And such a council was called, and it was the first time that Christian bishops from all over the world had met to discuss and decide upon major issues of common concern. Now, the novel's argument goes further and states that Constantine called this council to create a list of books that would be recognized as Christian scriptures. That's one thing he said. And two, to make sure that Jesus would thereafter be recognized as divine rather than mortal. Okay, that's what Dan Brown says. The facts are these. Nicaea did not decide the list of books in our Bible. Didn't decide that. That's not what its purpose was. And Christians everywhere at that time had already agreed that Jesus was both human and divine. But here's the issue of Nicaea. The issue was they differed on how the human and the divine natures related, how they related. The creed that the council came up with, the Nicene Creed that we read from time to time in our services, was the primary way that it addressed the relationship between the divine and the human. Now let me say a little more about that. Let's do a little artwork up here. I'll push this down for those of you to see this. Okay, we had at that time one group called the Orthodox, can't spell, the Orthodox group, and a group headed by a fella named Arius, A-R-I-U-S. You'll hear it put as the Arian controversy, okay? The Arians. All right, so it's the same person. It's just how they say it, Arius and Arian. All right. There were two ways that they were looking at this nature. You had God, in the Orthodox version, you had God, you had Jesus, you had humanity. And the same thing over here. They would agree. You had God, you had Jesus, you had humanity. Now, the Orthodox folks said the line should be placed for where they related. The line should be placed right here. That God and Jesus were just like that. And then there was humanity. Okay? And that Jesus was more divine, in essence, than he was human. Okay? In essence, that's what the Orthodox statement was about. On the Arian side, Arius said, nope, the line should be right here. There's God, and then there's Jesus and humanity. Okay? That Jesus was more a person who came from us and is divine, but not so much as the Orthodox folks wanted to say he was. And so there it is. How divine is Jesus? It's an issue that we deal with, continue to deal with today. There are issues about from church to church in styles of worship of how much divinity we give to Jesus and how much humanity we give to Jesus. And as you go across denominations, even within the United Methodist Church, there's a wide spectrum of how human Jesus is. And this issue is one that we're going to follow really throughout our 4 weeks together, and I think is really at the crux of the controversy that surrounds this whole book. So I want you to look in your hymnals. Pull them out right there. They're right in front of you. Let's take a look at the Nicene Creed. Okay, it is number 880. And let's see who won out, all right, at the Council of Nicaea. Let's see who won out. Okay, you got it there? We believe in one God, the Father, the Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, of all that is seen and unseen. Now, here we get to the real juicy part. We believe in one Lord, Jesus Christ, the only Son of God. Here we go. Eternally begotten of the Father. There it is. So what does that sound like? Who won? The Orthodox. Eternally begotten of the Father. Take a look at that line. Where's Jesus in that line? Right here. God and Jesus, just like that. Okay? You don't use begotten all that much in your vocabulary, I know, but there we go. Eternally begotten of the Father, God from God, light from light, true God from true God. Then there's that word again. Begotten, not made. So there was the line. There was the issue right there. Somehow in the Arian controversy here, somehow Jesus was just not quite divine enough. That somehow he was made and not born of God, okay? But of one being with the Father. And then it goes on. But there's the real crux of that. So I wanted you to see that is the issue that was argued at Nicaea in 325, and the orthodoxy won out. It wasn't a huge battle. It wasn't. It wasn't certainly a very strong issue, but the Arians, in essence, gave over. They said, "Okay, we will agree with this statement," and those bishops who were sympathetic to the Arians, eventually just said, okay, we compromise. We say, this is a statement that we as a church can read. But that was the controversy. How human, how divine. Now, I want to go through the book and looking at page 231. Okay, if you happen to have those books, you can follow along with me. But I want to look at some of the points there was a question asked there, which is a lie and which is not. And I want to look at a few of those here. On page 231, Dan Brown makes the statement, understandably, Jesus' life was recorded by thousands of followers across the land. Well, that's not quite true. The earliest known written records of the life of Jesus are our four Gospels. Okay? They really are the earliest ones, and they range in the years from 65 A.D. roughly. These are all roughly done to about the early 2nd century, maybe as high as 115 A.D. Other writings, also called Gospels, give very few details about Jesus' life at all, and often include Gnostic. Now, I got to spell that word up here for folks, because sometimes when you hear that word, Gnostic, I better flip the page. I'm thinking that not everybody can see down below here. So Gnostic, Gnostic. Okay, that's what we're saying when I say Gnostic. And Gnostic writings were they contained within them secret teachings, was the idea. Secret teachings. And are agreed by most scholars to have been completed no sooner than the middle of the 2nd century. So some of these secondary and other writings, like the Gospel of Mary, I'll get into a few others, and the Gospel of Judas that was asked about. So there weren't just gobs and gobs of writings going on out there. They weren't writing that much back then. Again, the stories of Jesus by the disciples were passed around campfires, voice to voice, ear to ear, for many decades before they were written down. just like our other writings in the Old Testament, except in the Old Testament, for hundreds and hundreds of years, that got passed along. So what happens to stories when they get passed along by word of mouth? They change. Yes, they do. And can we really decipher what changed? We really can't. We have to go by the written record. This is what we've got. We can we can speculate about, did this really happen? We're not sure, those kind of things. But that is just the process that has been handed on to us. So know that. That's how these stories have been passed along. But, always think this, there are stories that are important to a community of faith, that are very important. And when they're important enough to be told again and again and then be written down, then there's something in those stories that's very important for us as people of faith. That's why they're written down. So we can't, just look at this and say, well, this just didn't happen this way. Would we do that with the creation story, that we have at the beginning? It was written down, and we have 2 creation stories. Well, that's true. That's how they were handed down to us. Is one not true and one that we don't do that. We say that each story tells us a little something more about those who wrote it, a little something more about who God is, and in our case here in the New Testament, about who Jesus is, who he was, who the disciples were, a little more about the community. Why did they save this story and not save that one? Okay, I'm going to keep going. In Dan Brown's book, he says, more than 80 Gospels were considered for the New Testament, and yet only a relative few were chosen for inclusion. They used that line in the movie too, didn't they? I guess not. Not many people have seen the movie. Yes, they did. Yes, they did. Thank you. Thank you, Miss Venable, right there. Appreciate that. Well, that's not really so. Okay? 80 Gospels. That's a lot of Gospels out there. We have evidence, and that's what we have to go by. We have evidence of maybe 12 to 14 Gospels having ever been produced, depending on the definition of a gospel. All right? All right? If a gospel, which again means good news, gospel means good news. If a gospel is a written account of the life and teachings of Jesus, which are tied to historical events, then only the 4 that are in the Bible fit that definition. Okay? So what about these other writings, these other, say, 8, 9 writings? Other works that are called Gospels, let me list some of them here. Philip, Peter, the Gospel of Peter, Mary Magdalene, Judas, Thomas, Gospel of Thomas. That's gotten a lot of play most recently. There are some very good books out about the Gospel of Thomas. Egyptians, Gospel of the Egyptians, the Gospel of Truth. Okay, that's kind of odd to have that out there. This is truth, and is it? Is it not? Among some others as well. All of these other works address little, if anything, about the actual life of Jesus. And when they do, they tend to focus on 1 or 2 events in his life as a way to suggest that he endorsed or began some kind of secret, or, what's the word? Gnostic. Very good. Gnostic teaching. Okay? In reality, the current 4 Gospels that we have in our Bible were well established as the only valid ones by the year 170 A.D. Okay, so again, about 100 years later, or a little less, that they had been used. I think the important thing to remember for how these Gospels got into our Bible, the important piece was, were they being used in Christian communities? were they seen as authoritative? That's really the crux of the matter. And if they were being used in your community, say in that section, but not by these three, then that's going to not hold up well when the time comes. Is this one we want to put in? We get no's from this group and yes from you all. So it kind of weighed out like that. And throughout all these, several writings were going on. Again, not 80, but a much smaller number. So that's how it got decided. And who decided it? Okay, who decided it? Again, we had councils of Nicaea. There were other councils and other groups of bishops and church officials who came together and were sorting through these very questions. What do we keep? Which ones are going to make it? Which ones are not? And some of the writings, as you've heard the name apocryphal, there is those extra canonical. That's the word. When I say canon, when I'm saying that word canon, I'm meaning our Bible. Okay, I'm meaning the Bible, the canon of the Bible, and so all of that, those writings, the extra canonical writings that we call the Apocrypha, those writings that didn't make it, those have been published too. I highly recommend you finding those. We have copies of those in our library here just to read some of those. They're very good. There's one story, a book called Tobit that I love, Tobit. That's a wonderful story, but for a lot of reasons, it didn't make it into our main canon Bible for lots of reasons. There's a whole lot of history behind that too, but these made it. It appears that two major criteria were used in deciding what books would be recognized or used. One was whether the text had a plausible link to one of the original apostles, okay, and that link could be established by history or theology or even writing style. Another was how widely the book was used, as I've said, among Christians generally. On both counts, those other Gospels fell out of favor. They fell out very early on. They didn't hold up. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John stayed strong throughout all of that. Okay? Point 3. How am I doing on time? All right, we're doing good. All right, we're doing okay. Another point that Dan Brown makes is this on page 231. Still, that was a big bunch of lies. No, that was the one that had had a page where he just he said a lot of things that people took a great issue to. On that page, he said, the Bible, as we know it today, was collated by the pagan Roman emperor Constantine the Great. Page 231. That was not true. Constantine did not collate the Bible. As I said, the Bible was put together over many years by many different church councils, people, not just one person. How could that hold up? Even back in those times, it didn't. There were a lot of people, a lot of Christians. If books were not being used, those became, side books. A community might use those in their own community and just there, or just in a region of that day, but not fully. Constantine did have some political self-interest in calling together the Council of Nicaea, because Christianity was the fastest growing religion in the empire at the time that he legalized it in 313 AD. That's the big boost to Christianity, was that Constantine legalized it. He made it, in essence, the official religion of the Roman Empire in 313 AD. The story is such that he looked up in the sky during a battle and saw a cross in the sky and took that as an omen. That was one of the stories that was handed on to us. Was it true? We don't know. It's the story that he used and told about. And but that act really helped Christianity very much. You can imagine, no longer was it secret. No longer did they have to hide in places in order to worship together. It was okay to come out in the open. But Christianity was also deeply divided about the relationship between the divine and human natures of Jesus. Oh, back here. Let's go back to that. That same issue. That still comes up. How human was Jesus? How divine was Jesus? Was it 50-50? Was it 60-40? Was it 70-30? On both counts, on both sides. Excuse me. Christians, no, forgive me, I've done something with my notes here. The Redeemer myths of other cultures. There are many cultures that have heroes in it, let's call it, and redeemers in them, have generally portrayed their redeemers as divine only, and or their deaths as required by justice or forces that are outside human control. In other cultures, you'll just see, this person's only divine, comes straight down from heaven, and that's it, and really doesn't mix with humanity. It's only divine. But Christians have always believed and taught that Jesus is a human, fully real, and a historical person. Always have done that. So fully divine, fully human, fully divine, and so that makes up the question. So how much? I mean, how can you say that? And this became the issue for it. Just to say fully human, fully divine, for some people wasn't enough. They wanted some percentages, I guess, more than anything else. Christians declared that his execution on a crucifix really happened, and that it was the result of a miscarriage of human justice. So Christians have always believed that the Jesus that we have come to know was both human and divine. And we'll continue to wrestle with that issue right on through the next century and beyond. How much so for us? Okay, point 4, page 233. Dan Brown makes this comment. My dear, I think this is Teabing talking. I think this was that rich man Teabing. My dear, until that moment in history, Jesus was viewed by his followers as a mortal prophet, a great and powerful man, but a man nonetheless, a mortal. And we'll continue on with this. The Gospels and epistles attest to both the humanity and divinity of Jesus. Several of the later Gnostic movements were known for insisting on the divinity of Jesus and not on his humanity. And this is because they believed, the Gnostics believed that material creation, so us in essence, material creation was so incapable of bearing pure truth that only a purely spiritual being could possibly bring real revelation to humankind. The idea that Jesus was divine was not under dispute at Nicaea, just about the nature of his divinity. Okay, so I think we've made that point and made it again and again and again. So, Bill, let's move on. Point 5. On page 234, Dan Brown says, Constantine commissioned and financed a new Bible, which omitted those Gospels that spoke of Christ's human traits and embellished those Gospels that made him God-like. The earlier Gospels, Dan Brown says, were outlawed, gathered up, and burned. Quite a statement. And that just, when you hear that, when you read that, you think, oh my, what a controversy that was, and how dramatic that would be. Well, let's now give the facts of what Constantine actually did. Constantine did order 50 Bibles to be made for new churches that were going to be built in Asia Minor. Now again, think back to the time. We're in 325. There weren't copy machines out there. And to order 50 Bibles was quite a task because they all had to be copied by hand and then sent out. So that was a tall order that had to be carried out, and it was. He didn't finance a new Bible, just the production of 50 copies of the existing one at that time, which included our 4 Gospels. Constantine also issued a letter on behalf of the council calling for the Arian texts to be burned. All right? So the burning of the Arian texts was called for by Constantine at that time. And there's more to say on that, and I'm going to direct you to some other places to do some reading on. Talks about Athanasius, one of the bishops of Alexandria, and a letter that he wrote and spoke more on that issue. But the Arians, in essence, lost. They lost out, and the orthodoxy did win, and so that is where we come down to today. All right, not bad. 10:25. Okay, so that's the presentation I wanted to make today. But now I want to see questions that raises for you or anyone else. Please. No, it was not that way. They didn't have a preset idea of how many, they wanted to have in there. Again, here's a Bible, and again, Bible is it's really hard to say it's one book. It's really a library. It's so many books that have been brought into it, and there was a lot of controversy. Even, I think of the book of Revelation, which is controversial today. And let me tell you, it was controversial back then. There was a lot of wrestling about whether that book should be included as the final book in this incredible collection that has been put together over centuries of time. So it was, a process just like us today. We have committee meetings. Oh my gosh, we've got to talk about this again. And you come together and you sit around a table and you're arguing back and forth and trying to make good case for this book over that book. And it was that kind of process over a long period of time, so that I want to say by the end of the 4th century, we had a full Bible pretty well put together. I mean, it was basically what we have today by then. I haven't got my years right on that, but pretty soon after by this. But certainly by 170, the New Testament. Per se, the Gospels and all that, the letters of Paul, all those included. Those were all part of the scriptures that were being used. Other questions? Please. Okay.
But assuming that he was a baby, as a baby he was human, when did he become divine? Was it the age of 12 or what? What's the belief there?
Okay, there you go. Now see, here's the questions folks are asking like that. So what would you say? What would you say? Okay, what would some others say? When did Jesus become divine? Oh, okay, he always was. Any other answers out there? That way back in the back, yeah. Oh, at his baptism, okay? At his baptism, at age 12, he always was. Any other time? Okay? Okay, please, yes? Okay, just a second. I'm going to hold on that question just a second. I want to finish this one, and then I'll get right to you. But so there is the issue as to when, how is Jesus divine? And so, a question, when did it happen? And it seems, I think, to say that Jesus was always divine and always human. And how these get put together, I leave up. I just say, thank you, God. I'll let you figure that out. But I choose to worship this man as my Savior, as someone who is a redeemer for my life. And I don't quite get all the points of how and what and where and when, but I trust in your will for my life, in your power to make it all happen. So you take care of those details, God, and I'll just live my life here.
May I say my thing about yellow and blue make green?
Please.
I like to think of it, and this is so Vacation Bible School, but if you take two transparencies, one is red. Note a transparency is just a piece of plastic. One is red, and then one is blue. This is fully red over here. This is fully blue over here. But if you lay them on top of one another and hold it up to the sunlight, you get purple. So it's purple, but it's still fully red and it's still fully blue.
Right. It's a good example. Just to say that. So there's a good and so ways of explaining these things. There are different ways we can do that, but I trust in that. I want to handle this person's question here at the back. You talked about the Coptic Church. Okay, and say the question again, please. Yes. Yes. if that
I don't know. I just wanted to know if do they recognize these gospels?
Yeah. If those were used more in that part of the world, yes, they were more in that part of the world, but they didn't hold enough authority for us, for the whole Christian church to say we're going to use these Gnostic writings and hold them up as authoritative. For some people, that was just an example of some people in certain regions of the world at that time claimed those and said, these are important, but not enough to say we can put them in the book. So,
Pam has a question.
I wanted to ask you how the Greek translation of the word Gnostic fits into this discussion. And I also wanted to comment that in this morning's paper, the Egyptian Coptic Church is attempting to keep the movie out of Egypt.
Oh, they are. Okay.
For obvious reasons.
So say more about the translation of...
The Greek translation of the word is knowledge.
Okay.
So I'm curious as to how that corresponds with the discussion we're having about the fact that they may or may not be accurate.
Right. And it's a particular kind of knowledge that they are putting forth. In essence, saying that we know things that everybody doesn't know. And there are things, and so as the writings come off, like the Gospel of Thomas is just line after line after line about things that supposedly Jesus had said. It doesn't say anything about his life. There's no historical narrative or anything like that. And so they're teachings. It's knowledge that is being passed along. And again, since it doesn't connect so much with historical facts, it says that they're saying that yes, Jesus said this, but it wasn't large enough to where it was accepted by so many people. So the Gnostic knowledge, the idea that there was knowledge that we have about Jesus, and to say that this Jesus was a spiritual being, a fully divine being. We don't accept this stuff that Jesus was human. Okay, we don't accept that. We say that the Gnostics are saying that Jesus is fully divine, and that only a being like that can impart this kind of special knowledge. So forth it came. There are some very interesting things that are said, and I've some that I've said, oh, I like that, and some I said, oh, I don't like that either. I don't like that part. But I think of the books, the Left Behind series, that I'm sure several of you have read, that also have that idea that we have some special knowledge that the rest of the church does not have or does not reveal. Just as those who get into the book of Revelation and talk about that, to say there's some kind of a code. There's that word again, Da Vinci Code, Revelation Code, that not everybody knows about. But if you, get into what they call Bible prophecy, that's a catchphrase, Bible prophecy, which is not biblical. It is not biblical, but it is that kind of secret knowledge, that same idea that gets imparted. It's very similar to what is happening even here in this book. So I want to say this kind of thing comes up from time to time, and it will come up again. We're going to be visiting this again.
I have time for one more quick question.
Okay, good. Then we'll have to stop. One more question. Please, back here. Yeah. Oh, certainly. Absolutely. Absolutely. This is a hero of the faith, and why not put that on Moses? One of our heroes of the faith that comes along, and so many. What Bible writers would so often do is they would what they call concretize. Okay, there's a big word for your next party. They'd concretize a whole lot of history into one person. So you've heard it said that Moses wrote the book of the law, the first 5 books of the Bible. Well, that's not true, but they'd concretize their history into that one person and say, this is a hero of our faith. They did the same thing with Elijah. Elijah, the first main prophet, came out, Elijah, and they'd concretize a lot of history down into that one. He was the beginning. And so why not? Why not say that, here's Jesus coming along. There are similarities. He also was sent by God and had to claim that for himself. And in his baptism comes up and the Spirit of the dove descends upon him, and it's like, okay, I'm ready for my ministry now. And Moses too, struggling through and saying, I am the one, God's picked me. So there is similarity, absolutely, in that. There is connection. Okay, Amy, anything? Any wrap up for you? Okay, we're going to wrap that up for today. We've come to a point where we've got to stop, but I hope you'll come back next week for when we'll get into the marriage of Jesus and Mary Magdalene. Amy will deal with that and has some revealing things to share with us. Oh, yes, to share. So I hope that all of you will come back. I don't know if Dr. Biggs always closes with a prayer, but I will. So let's bow our heads. Gracious God, we are enamored and our curiosity has been piqued by Dan Brown's book. And our hope and prayer is that this book, this discussion, will enhance our own faith and help to increase our love, our worship of you in our lives, so that we may become more loving, more caring, more justice-filled people. For it's in the name of Christ that we pray. Amen. Amen. Thank you all so much for being here. We'll see you next week.